I always thought the worst kind of betrayal was the kind you could see coming, the kind that gnawed at you in quiet ways until it finally tore through. But it turns out there's something worse. The betrayal that lived in the shadows for years, smiling at you across the breakfast table, tucking itself under the sheets beside you every night, pretending to be love. That was Maggie, my wife. We had been married 5 years, together almost a decade. I thought I knew everything about her quirks, her favorite candle scent, the way she hated the feeling of wool against her skin. I thought I knew her laugh better than I knew my own heartbeat. And then one night, sitting in my office at home, going through an old external hard drive while trying to find some tax records, I found a folder that shouldn't have been there. It was named something random, Docs 2014. But inside were pictures and screenshots, saved conversations. At first I didn't understand. I thought maybe they were backups from her old phone. Maggie wasn't great with technology, so I assumed she had dumped them here years ago and forgot. But as I clicked through, the air in the room seemed to change. There she was, Maggie, younger, still the girl I met in college, her smile caught mid-laugh in a car selfie. Next to her, in almost every photo, was another man. His name appeared in the messages, Eric. And the messages, they weren't casual. They weren't innocent. They traced a whole life that I never knew existed, a second life. I read one line, just one, that burned through me like acid. I can't believe he doesn't suspect anything yet. Sometimes I feel guilty, but then I remember how safe he makes me feel, how boring he is compared to you. I sat there, staring at the glow of the screen, my hands numb on the mouse. The timestamp was from 8 years ago. We'd only been dating for a year at the time, which meant this didn't start after the marriage. It started at the beginning, and it didn't stop. The latest messages were from just before our wedding, and some even trickled into the first year we lived together. The truth hit me in waves. While I had been planning proposals, saving up for a ring, rehearsing vows, Maggie had been rehearsing lies. And when I said I do, I hadn't married a woman, I had married a mask. For the next few days, I carried that knowledge around like a live wire under my skin. I went to work, sat through meetings, even joked with coworkers, all while inside me something was unraveling. At night, I lay next to Maggie, listening to her soft, steady breathing, wondering if she was dreaming of me or of him. I didn't confront her right away. That would have been too easy, too quick. No, I needed to understand the full shape of what she had done, the depth of her deception, so I started digging. Her email, her old social accounts, the backups on her old iPad she thought she'd erased. Piece by piece, I built a timeline, and what I found was worse than I imagined. She hadn't just cheated, she had orchestrated 2 lives in parallel, slipping between them with practiced ease. Dinners with me on Friday nights, weekend getaways with him. Birthday celebrations that overlapped like twisted reflections. There were nights when she told me she was working late at the hospital, and I remember cooking her dinner, waiting up, only for her to come home exhausted and smiling faintly. Those nights, I now knew she had been with Eric. She had walked into our home smelling of his cologne, maybe even carrying his touch on her skin, and I had kissed her, oblivious. That was the kind of betrayal it was. I knew I couldn't just explode, couldn't just scream at her, pack her bags, throw her out. She had stolen 5 years of my life, no, more than that, almost a decade. If I was going to respond, it couldn't be messy. It had to be exact. It had to be a mirror. So I started planning. First, I pretended nothing was wrong. That was the hardest part. I still woke up beside her, still made us coffee in the mornings, still kissed her forehead when she looked tired. But beneath it all, I was gathering information, evidence, control. I copied everything I had found into a hidden folder on a secure drive. Screenshots, dates, even receipts she didn't know I kept. I contacted a lawyer. A quiet consultation, just hypothetical questions at first, but enough to learn what divorce would mean, what leverage I'd need, how property would split, what infidelity could do in court. Meanwhile, I began planting small seeds in our life. things Maggie wouldn't notice at first. Canceling a credit card here, redirecting mail there, slowly shifting our joint accounts so I could see everything she spent. I wasn't stealing, just watching, waiting. Then I started testing her. One night I mentioned, casually, that an old college friend had reached out, someone I had been close with. I saw the flicker in her eyes, the faint tightening of her smile. She asked a few too many questions, trying to gauge if I had secrets of my own. I told her half-truths, enough to make her wonder. Watching her squirm was the first taste of something close to justice. But revenge, real revenge, needed precision. It came to me one evening when Maggie left her phone on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower, steam curling under the door. I didn't snoop through her messages. I already had enough. Instead, I opened the photo app and quietly airdropped myself a few recent selfies she had taken. Then I built a fake account, posing as someone she didn't know, and uploaded her pictures. It wasn't for catfishing or humiliation. It was bait. Through this account, I reached out to Eric. Yes, he was still around. Married now with 2 kids, but still carrying the same smug arrogance in his online presence. I didn't even need to pretend much. A few suggestive messages, a photo of Maggie cropped just enough to look like a stranger, and within days he was responding. Eager, reckless. I didn't push it far, just enough to capture screenshots, enough to prove that he was still the same man Maggie had chosen over me. And then I waited. The anniversary of our wedding was coming up, 5 years. Maggie was planning a dinner, talking about inviting friends, maybe renting a small cabin upstate. She seemed happy, glowing in the way people do when they believe everything is solid beneath them. That night, as she sat across from me at the dinner table, telling me about some new project at work, I slid a small envelope across the table. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "An anniversary gift," I said. She opened it, expecting tickets or maybe jewelry. Instead, she pulled out a single photograph, one of her and Eric from years ago, saved from that hidden folder. Beneath it was a neatly typed list of dates and locations. I watched her face change. The blood drained, the breath hitch. "I know everything, Maggie," I said quietly. "I've known for months, since before we celebrated your last birthday, since before that trip to Maine. Every laugh we shared since then, I knew." She stammered, tried to explain, to deny, but I cut her off. "This isn't a fight. This isn't me asking questions. This is me telling you it's over. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I've already prepared everything. What you see here is a fraction of what I have." Her hands shook as she tried to hold the paper. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Not anger anymore, not sadness, just clarity. "You didn't just cheat, Maggie. You built a life on lies. You stole years from me, years I can't get back. But here's the part you don't get. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to beg. I'm going to walk away, and you're going to live every day knowing I beat you at your own game. That mask you wore, it's gone now. Everyone will see you for what you are." And I meant it. Because the next morning when she woke, I was gone. The house was half empty, my clothes and essentials already moved out. On the kitchen table, I left a stack of papers, divorce filings, bank statements, copies of the evidence. Neat, orderly, undeniable. She texted me all day, called, left voicemails sobbing and pleading. I didn't answer, not once. And that was my revenge. Not a grand explosion. Not violence, not drama, just precision, silence, control. I had given her nothing to fight against, no scene to rewrite in her mind. Only the quiet weight of her own betrayal finally reflected back at her. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about the years I lost. The versions of myself that believed in her, that built dreams on sand. But then I remember her face at the dinner table, the exact moment the mask cracked, and I realized that in some small way, I got those years back. Because I stopped being her victim the moment I chose patience over rage. And that quiet, deliberate exact is what destroyed her.
So the first story is over. It's time for the second. Trust me, It'll be even more interesting.
I never really thought of myself as the type of man who would get blindsided like this. I always considered myself careful, maybe even a little too cautious. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, raised by parents who measured worth not by flash or charm, but by steady work and reliability. My father had this saying he'd repeat whenever I got impatient: "Money isn't just paper, son, it's time. It's all the hours you traded in, all the pieces of your life you don't get back." That stayed with me. So when I graduated college and started working as a systems analyst for a healthcare company in Columbus, I treated every paycheck like a brick in the foundation of something bigger. While my buddies blew cash on weekend trips and bar tabs, I funneled mine into a savings account. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked the slow, steady accumulation. I had a goal, a down payment for a modest home, maybe even a ring for Hannah if things kept going the way I thought they were going. Hannah. God, just saying her name in my head feels different now. We'd been together for 3 years, and I believed she was the kind of woman who valued the same things I did: stability, honesty, the quiet kind of love that doesn't need to be performed. She was smart, a marketing coordinator at a tech startup, and she had that way about her where people seemed to pay attention when she spoke. She wasn't flashy, or at least I thought she was. I figured we were aligned, both of us slowly climbing our ladders, building something steady. But then came that morning. It was a Saturday in June, one of those clear summer mornings where the air feels too generous. I was making coffee in our apartment kitchen, scrolling through my banking app to check on a transfer. The numbers didn't make sense at first. My balance, which should have hovered safely above $47,000, looked gutted. $22,000 gone in one sweep. Another 6 disappeared in smaller chunks. My chest tightened as if the air had thinned. I thought maybe it was fraud, some breach. But the transactions had names attached. Familiar ones: Hannah's favorite boutique stores, a flight booking service, an upscale hotel in Miami. My stomach dropped. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to hide it. She sat on the edge of our couch, her hands clasped like she was rehearsing for a role. "Tom, I didn't mean for you to find out like this." "Find out what?" I asked, my voice dry. That's when she told me about Ryan, about how she'd met him at a conference 2 months earlier, how he was different, how he made her feel alive. My savings, my bricks of time, my years of restraint had been spent to keep pace with him. Lavish dinners, plane tickets, clothes she thought he'd admire. She called it an investment in herself. She said I wouldn't understand. I don't even remember what I replied. The words blurred into noise, something between anger and disbelief. What I do remember is the sensation in my chest, a hollow implosion, like something collapsing inward. For days I barely spoke. I went to work, sat in meetings, nodded at the right times, but inside I was a furnace with the fire sucked out. Nights I'd lie awake and replay everything. Her laughter over dinners we shared, the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder during movies, her promises about the future. All counterfeit, all poisoned by the knowledge that while I was building, she was dismantling. I wasn't sure what I wanted at first. Revenge sounded cheap, too obvious. But as the silence stretched, the idea evolved. It wasn't about screaming or smashing things. It was about balance, about restoring what she stole from me, not the money, because I'd never see that again, but something harder to measure: my time, my dignity. So I began to plan. The first step was patience. Hannah thought I'd be the predictable kind of man, wounded, furious, ready to throw her out and cut ties immediately. But I didn't. I let her believe I was paralyzed, incapable of action. She stayed in the apartment, floating between fake apologies and self-justifications, still texting Ryan when she thought I wasn't looking. I kept my face unreadable, even when I wanted to scream. The second step was observation. Ryan wasn't hard to track. His Instagram was practically a portfolio of narcissism: yachts, gym selfies, motivational quotes about grinding. He worked in real estate development down in Miami, all sharp suits and veneers. Hannah was just another accessory to him, that was clear. The third step was execution. I didn't go for violence, I went for precision. I started small, using the skills I had from my job. You learn a lot working with systems, especially about how careless people can be with passwords and networks. Ryan was one of those guys who reused logins across platforms. Within a week, I had access to his personal email. Within 2, I had enough to see that his empire wasn't nearly as solid as he portrayed. A string of overdue invoices, quiet threats from contractors, cash flow that looked more like a leaky faucet than a fountain. I packaged what I found into an anonymous dossier. His business partners, his clients, even the luxury hotel chain that had just signed with him, they all got a taste of the chaos under the surface. I didn't need to forge anything. The truth was messy enough. Meanwhile, I played my role at home, calm, detached. I waited until Hannah booked her next trip to Miami on my credit card, though she thought I hadn't noticed. The night before her flight, I told her I knew everything. Her eyes flickered with something between pity and annoyance, like I was the child who didn't grow up fast enough. "I'm sorry, Tom," she said, "but we want different lives." She left that morning with a suitcase. I watched from the window as her Uber pulled away. I didn't stop her. I didn't need to. 2 weeks later, Ryan's name started showing up in the news, not in the glossy magazines, but in local business articles, the kind with headlines like "Developer faces lawsuits amid allegations of fraud. Deals collapse." His so-called empire crumbled in slow motion, visible to anyone who cared to watch. Hannah came back once unannounced, standing at my door with eyes rimmed red. She said she made a mistake, that Ryan wasn't who she thought he was, that she felt used. I listened, I nodded, but inside I felt something unfamiliar, not anger, not triumph, but a strange, clean emptiness, like the weight I'd carried for months had finally evaporated. I didn't let her back in. Now, when I check my bank app, the numbers are smaller than they should be. That part still stings. But when I see the balance, I hear my father's voice again. "Money is time, son." Hannah wasted some of mine. Ryan wasted some of hers. And me, I got mine back in a way they'll never understand. Because the thing about time is, once you know its value, you stop giving it to people who treat it like pocket change.